AVC, how's it going? Right, okay, normally I'll show you what I've been buying. Today I'm going to show you what I've been listening to. Last month or so I've been playing a lot of Blaxploitation soundtracks, been digging stuff out. I haven't played for quite a while some of these, so I thought I'd show you what I've been playing and just tell you a little bit about the records. So first up, this for me is the very first Blaxploitation film. This is Uptight. This is, the soundtrack was by Booker T. As you can see, it came out on the Stax label. You see the clicking fingers there. Right, okay. This is important for two reasons. First of all, the film itself is actually really quite average. It was really hard to find for years, and it's now on YouTube. You can watch it easily. But it does contain footage of Martin Luther King's funeral and the proceedings around it. Basically, the film was in production at the time of Martin Luther King's assassination, and on the day of the funeral, the director, a French director named Jules Dassin, excuse my pronunciation, just went out sort of guerrilla style onto the streets and just filmed the events, and it's fascinating. So it's important from that point of view, but from a music point of view, it's important for Stax. At the beginning of 1968, Otis Redding was killed in a plane crash. He was by far the biggest star on the label, but around the same sort of time as well, Stax realised that it didn't own any of its masters. The distribution deal it struck with Atlantic basically meant that Atlantic owned all of that music. So those great records by Otis Redding, Sam and Dave, Booker T and the MGs, none of it was owned by Stax. So it was really looking for a way forward in 1968. And one of the important records of the year was this, because it really showed how the label could progress with soundtracks. Obviously, which really came into fruition with Isaac Hayes' Shaft soundtrack. By far the most famous Blaxploitation film and soundtrack. Isaac Hayes won an Oscar for Best Original Song. I think he won. I think he was only the third black artist to win an Oscar. I think so. I might be wrong there, but I think that was the case. He also won a couple of Grammys for Best Original Song and Best Score. He actually auditioned for the film as well to play Shaft. Obviously, it went to Richard Roundtree, but he got his wish to appear in Blaxploitation films later on. But we'll come to that in a bit. But yeah, a great soundtrack. The highlight for me is side 4, the 13-minute version of Do Your Thing, just orchestrated funk from start to finish. Wonderful. Right, there were 2 more Shaft films. Isaac Hayes wasn't available to do the music for this one. This is the sequel, Shaft's Big Score. So the music was actually done by Gordon Parks, who was the director of both Shaft and this film. The soundtrack's okay, it does the job, ticks a box, but it's definitely not essential. The third film, however, albeit the film totally flopped, I think it made a massive loss. The soundtrack is a classic, scored by Johnny Pate, who had orchestrated and arranged all those wonderful Impressions records in the 60s. This is just a classic soundtrack from start to finish. Has been heavily sampled because it's funky, but yeah, quite hard to find in decent nick and can be quite costly, but if you do see it, pick it up. Right, a couple of other Johnny Pate soundtracks. This is from 1974, this is Brother on the Run, this is a reissue. Now the golden period I'd say for Blaxploitation films was about 71 through to 73, that's 2 to 3 year period. Once you get past that, both the music and the films, particularly the films, start getting a bit more diluted. But yeah, this is a nice enough score. And one other from Johnny Pate, I think this is another slightly later one, about 75 I think this one is. Yeah, 75. This is Bucktown. You can see this stars Pam Grier. This is a bootleg. I don't think the soundtrack is actually available, so this is a modern bootleg of that, which is okay, decent enough. Right, okay. Now this is a really nice soundtrack. This is Come Back Charleston Blue. Music was done by Donny Hathaway and Quincy Jones. Now the score is nice, but the highlight of this is the track Little Ghetto Boy. Now the Roots and John Legend covered it for their Wake Up album, I think about 6-7 years ago now, which is a nice version, but the original I think is Donny Hathaway's finest vocal performance. Absolutely gorgeous song. Yeah, just a key song in the whole Blaxploitation genre, so yeah, check that if you can. Okay, one of my favourite Blaxploitation soundtracks is actually on Motown Records. This is The Mac by Willie Hutch. Now this isn't the first album, Blaxploitation album to come out of Motown. That was Trouble Man by Marvin Gaye. This is often overlooked as a Blaxploitation soundtrack. I think largely because because of the cover art with a picture of Willie Hutch on it, rather than having the film artwork on the cover, which obviously makes a lot of the records desirable. But yeah, this is good because it's predominantly song based. A lot of the soundtracks are score based predominantly, but this is all tunes, every one a classic, and this is normally cheap as chips. I think I paid £3 for this, and this is the original die cut sleeve, but yeah, very nice. Right, one of the most famous films, most successful films certainly, is Across 110th Street. Obviously the main title theme is done by Bobby Womack. Now I reckon I first heard that song because it's used as the title sequence of Jackie Brown, which also stars Pam Grier. Pam Grier should definitely be nominated for an Oscar for that film. Her performance is fantastic. I mean, a lot of the Blaxploitation films, the acting is hammy at best, but although Jackie Brown is certainly an homage to the genre, the performances in it are absolutely fantastic, and Tarantino used a lot of original music, of which, as I say, Across 110th Street was the title track, and that is a classic in itself. The rest of the album is okay. It's scored by J.J. Johnson, I believe. Yeah, and the score's okay, but it's the songs that are the highlight for this. Another J.J. Johnson score is this is a promo. This is Cleopatra Jones, title track by Joe Simon. Yeah, this is the sort of start of things with the strong female lead. So this is Tamara Dobson in the lead in this, but you can quite easily just move on to Pam Grier. This is Coffee. This is the best Pam Grier Blaxploitation film by far. Music by Roy Ayers. Now some of the best jazz funk was done by Roy Ayers in the 70s, and this is no exception. One of the best Blaxploitation albums. A great sleeve as well. This is, as you can see, is a reissue. I paid £7 for this back in the early 90s, but if you get a chance to pick that up, certainly do. And for me, the very best Blaxploitation album is Curtis Mayfield's Superfly. One of the best films as well. Every track on this is fantastic. Little Child Running Wild, Pusher Man, Freddy's Dead, Give Me Your Love, Superfly. Absolutely classic stuff from start to finish. This is an original. This is a reissue on Charlie. This is one of the first Curtis albums I bought in the early 90s. Sounds good, so that'll do, mate. And Curtis made quite a few Blaxploitation albums. This is a soundtrack to a film called Short Eyes. Not a great film, but the soundtrack is often overlooked because of how good Superfly is, but definitely worth picking up and always cheap. I think I paid £5 for this. Great album. Another big hit film, Let's Do It Again, starring Bill Cosby, we don't like to talk about, of course, and Sidney Poitier. But the music is done by Curtis Mayfield, all vocals done by the Staple Singers. Often overlooked, I don't know why, because this is just great stuff from start to finish. Again, predominantly song based. I think it's only the last 2 tracks which are instrumentals, but yeah, definitely check that out. I think the title track from that was #1 actually in the States back in the day. Right, another Mavis Staples. This is the same people that made Let's Do It Again. The film, they got together and made another film called A Piece of the Action. The film's not great, but this is another overlooked gem. Also produced and written by Curtis Mayfield, and also by Mavis Staples. I mean, you can't ask for any more than that. Absolutely great stuff. Right, keep going. Talking about Curtis, we've got to talk about the Impressions. This is an album that they made later on. This is Three the Hard Way, starring Jim Brown, Fred Williamson and Jim Kelly. What a trio there. Once again, this is slightly later, mid-70s, yeah, 74. The film's not great, but the soundtrack's good. Now, early 70s, it's for me the golden period for James Brown, and of course he got in the action with the Blaxploitation soundtracks as well. Black Caesar. This is one of my favourite James Brown albums. Again, it's a nice fold-out sleeve. Die cut. yeah, tracks like Down and Out in New York City, Mama Feel Good is the big tune on this. But yeah, really good stuff. Right, okay. The follow-up to that, Hell Up in Harlem. James Brown didn't do the soundtrack to that. It was done by Edwin Starr. This is a really nice soundtrack as well. Big tune on this is Easing In. You may well know that. But yeah, great album. Okay, Isaac Hayes mentioned him earlier on about him wanting to act. Well, he did eventually in Truck Turner. This is, for me, equally as good as the Shaft album, but overlooked just because of the Shaft album's success. But this is another double. Let's say 4 sides of just orchestrated funk. Absolutely fantastic. And another one, I mean, he was right in the groove in the 70s, wasn't he? You know, so not as good. This is Tough Guys, 3 Tough Guys, I think the film was called. The soundtrack's just labelled as Tough Guys, but pretty good. Right, a couple more. Run out of time, so just show a couple more. Black Emmanuel, obviously a spin on the Emmanuel series of films. This is okay. This has got a. This is a bit later, 1976. Not quite as funky, but nicely orchestrated. Yeah, it's got a nice vibe to it. Interesting cover. And last one I'll show here. This is actually pre-Shaft. I mean, you can really sort of split the Blaxploitation genre into before and after Shaft. This is 1970. Cotton Comes to Harlem. One of my favourite covers. Music by Gal McDermott. Nice album. Yeah, I might do another one of these, but yeah, cool. Cheers.